Hello chess enthusiasts, we have arrived at position number 8 in our Soviet series of 12 chess puzzles. The position in front of you is a mate in 6 moves, and the question that we need to ask ourselves before anything else is it in order for white to allow black to castle? I appreciate that at the moment black cannot castle because the white queen is covering the c8 square and you cannot castle into check. But supposing white should move his queen at some point that would enable black to castle, is it a good idea? Or is it not such a good idea? And we want to keep black's king on the back rank if we can possibly manage it. We needn't concern ourselves with black's d pawn. It looks a bit dangerous, but I can tell you now that it doesn't come into the variations whatsoever. So what would you say the key move is here? Just pause the video for a moment and have a good look at that. Well, I must confess that I thought that I'd solved this, and then I discovered that at the 4th turn my variation was cooked. Well, it wasn't, as a matter of fact. It was still correct up to that point, but I made a miscalculation, and I'll show you the miscalculation as we eventually reach that stage, and then I'll show you the correct solution. As I keep saying, especially these Soviet problems, they're far more convoluted than any that I've previously viewed or probably will ever view, and I think this one has proved to be the most difficult of all of them so far, and maybe throughout. So let's just move over to the pocket chess set, and there's the same position. Well, it is a waiting move. It's tempting, of course, to play queen c6 check and pick up the rook on a8 and then even the bishop on a7, but that doesn't help us in our endeavours. And if you do play queen c6 check, quite simply the king moves to f8 and then it will race away onto g7, and it's very difficult at that point to secure a mate in 6. I've been through that, so that doesn't work. And many other queen moves that look possibilities, like queen c6 check, king moves to f8, queen c1 is scuppered by this bishop coming into here. I'll just demonstrate what I mean by this. If you play here, clearly going to d7 would be queen d7 mate, so he has no option but to play king f8. And this was an idea that I had, with the idea of playing up here and finishing him off, but this move here scuppers it completely, because not only is the bishop blocking the diagonal, but it's covered by the rook, and then we have little problems here with the rook giving check. So I can tell you that there's no way that you could inflict mate in 6 moves with that variation. It's an interesting variation, as they all are, but it just doesn't work. So what we'll do is we'll put that back to the original position. Which is that. Like I say, it is a waiting move. It's not a checking move. Queen b7 would equally stop black from castling, and you could pick up the rook, but the king f8 variation comes into play, and you can even play bishop b8, and you take up more of your moves by playing queen takes a8 and then eventually queen takes b8. So it's not really worth consideration. So we won't go down that route. We don't need to stop black castling. I can tell you that he can castle at any stage, and he is not safe. I'll give you the key move. It's queen a1. This is a problem of diagonals. You need to control essentially the major diagonals. So I'm giving you a clue there. The corner points of the board. That's the first move. Now this move here is evidently threatening on the move queen h8 mate. So what we'll do is black can castle, it doesn't work. And I'll show you why in just a moment. But of the alternatives, if he were to play bishop to d4, then you take the rook off. He's played that to stop the presence of the queen exercising control down the a1 to h8 diagonal and delivering mate on h8. But you just simply whip this rook off, and that is checkmate. So bishop d4, or indeed any other bishop move, fails. If he plays rook to g3, then of course you just check down here. He puts his rook in the way and you finish him off on g8. And both these checkmates on a8 and g8, they're well under the prescribed 6 moves, but nonetheless they prove that there was no defense by doing any of that. And if he plays rook h3, exercising a defense over this square, all that you do is you whip this bishop off. And the variation that I'm going to show you in a moment, where black replies with 1 castle's long, he can castle long here. It's virtually the only defense now to queen h8, and it's exactly the same. So let me just put this back for a moment. And in fact, black is worse off in this variation because he's minus this rook, although admittedly it's using up 1 move. But in any event, after white has played queen a1, let's castle, and I'll show you what happens. And if you can just imagine all the while, if you already had played this and the rook is off, white is still going to come down here to a8, and he's threatening mate on the move on a8. This is why castling is not such a good choice at all, really. Now, if he plays rook d6 check, in other words, preventing queen a8, white simply plays this. And the net result of all of this is, if black should take this bishop, then it's queen a8 mate. If he should interpose the rook with check, then his bishop takes d7, and that's mate. So that just doesn't work at all. So what else is there after queen a1 castles? We've tried rook d6 check. I mean rook d7, it'd just be queen a8 mate, so that doesn't work. So what about c6 or c5? It matters not, because I'll show you why in a second. Just have a look at that, and what would you say the killer punch move is there? Clearly queen a8, king c7, so we don't want to allow him that flight square. Keep the queen on the 7th for the moment. Well, the move is knight c5, and like I say, if he played c5, you just take the pawn off, so it doesn't make any difference at all. And in reply to knight c5, we mate in similar fashion, as a matter of fact. I mean, if he plays here, then you just take the pawn, and it's a repeat performance, except for the fact that when he plays the rook back, you might take here, king moves here, and then queen b7 mate. So I think that pretty much proves the point that there's no defense to queen a1 castles, queen a7, c6 or c5, knight c5. He's going to be, in fact, he's threatened with mate on the move here, like that. If he were to play rook there, then you just take the rook, king moves there, and queen b7. It's either mate on d7 or b7 in all these variations. Taking the bishop is of no use because you just put the queen here and it will be checkmate. He does have this move, and so in reply to rook e3, we play king here. Let's take a look at that. And black is in check. Again, if he plays here, you just take the rook, king b8, queen b7 mate. If he interposes the rook, you just take it off. And then he has to play here. And then you take the rook on d7, king b7, queen b7, so it's mate either way. So rook e3 doesn't work. Rook e6, I beg your pardon. Rook e3 followed by rook e6. If he plays here, well then, evidently, you can just go here, can't you? And that's mate. So there's no problem. In fact, I think, looking at this again, if he did interpose here, then indeed it's already mate on the move, isn't it, with queen b7. This is what's so good about knight c5, it's controlling the b7 square. So you don't need to resort to playing queen a8 and king c7. You can just mate him on b7, so that is really quite effective. So I think that comprehensively deals with queen a1 castles. And we've also covered bishop d4, rook g3, and rook h3, again, just to slightly go over the point that I made earlier, that there's no difference after castles. That's the original position. Yeah, should he play here, you just take that off and he castles. This is on a1, of course. You just take the bishop and you're threatening mate on the move. And you just effectively have a repeat performance of those sorts of moves, except this time, of course, there's no rook here to take the bishop because the bishop's here. And what's so good about this is that if he does go here this time, you can either take the pawn or you can play here. Probably taking the pawn is the better move because it controls d8. And he's in check. What can he do there? Well, this time he does have to interpose the rook. And you just mate him on a8, like so. And that is, in fact, what you'd have to do, I've just noticed, you'd have to take the rook off, wouldn't you? Okay. This is a tricky one, but that's the proof that it is mate there. You have to watch out where a player interposes and he's giving check, you have to remove the check as well. So that's fair enough, and bishop d7 finishes the job rather admirably, I think. There's no getting away from that. That is checkmate. So I think, like I've just said, that does comprehensively deal with queen a1 castles. I don't think there's any need to go any further on that. But as is demonstrated, we do need to satisfy ourselves. I know that the problem setters only want the key move and the main line, which would lead you eventually to mate, which is fair enough. But in order to satisfy yourself that you have that, you do need to go through all of these other variations. It's a nauseating business, but it is necessary. So we arrived at queen a1. We've eliminated bishop d4. We've eliminated rook g3, rook h3, and castles. And it would do no good moving this pawn or that. And moving the king either way would result in queen h8 mate on the move. So the only move, in fact, is rook takes f5. That is really a forced move at this stage. The idea behind this, of course, is that black wants to interpose something between the queen on h8 when it eventually gets there and his king on e8. So we wanted to play this move, and of course black cannot castle here, even if he wanted to, because you can't castle when you're in check. So the forced move here, of course, is rook f8. So that's queen a1, rook takes f5, queen h8 check, rook f8. Now, there's only one move here that will enable us to solve this problem. Can you see it? It's white's third move. Just to give you a clue, again, it will stop black from castling, and it is a sacrifice. Well, this is where the knight comes in handy. You play knight to f6. Now, clearly, if the king should move to the only square to which it can move, it can't castle because it's in check. You just take the rook with the queen, and that would be checkmate. The beauty of this with the queen here is that the rook cannot recapture the knight because the king will be in check. So there's a forced third move for black, which is e takes f. Now then, where I went wrong the first time around is I thought to myself, we can now go here. With this square blocked by black's pawn, black cannot give check on f6, which it would have been able to do if we hadn't sacrificed the knight, and there wouldn't be any mate in 6. There still isn't any mate in 6 because, unfortunately, castles, and then there's definitely no mate in 6. And that's the problem with queen g7. Otherwise, it's an admirable move for threatening mate on e7, and even if he brought this bishop here to cover e7, you'd end up mating on d7. But because of black, this is where castling does work for black, and doesn't work for white. So castling hasn't worked on the first move. It hasn't worked on the second move. Remember the rook h3, bishop h3 castles. But it works if you're silly enough to play queen g7. Taking the 7th rank is always a good idea, but unfortunately castling does do a lot of damage, and this time probably black would be in a winning position because he'd have 2 rooks and a bishop and 3 pawns against a king and a queen. So you need to find the killer punch move, and I gave a clue a little while ago by saying that the long diagonals are of paramount importance in solving this. So clearly, to go back to a1 would not be possible, and it wouldn't achieve anything at this stage. Just a clue here, you need to concentrate on the light coloured squares. Can you see it? Let's take a good look at it. Well, of course, it's a queen move. It can only be a queen move. And you take the long diagonal. So the killer punch move is queen to h1. So this is very interesting, isn't it? The queen has gone from a6 to a1 to h8 and now to h1, and it's hitting the rook. In fact, it's threatening to take the rook. Black would have to interpose the bishop and take the bishop, and that's checkmate. And that is white's 4th move. So it will be 5, 6, which meets the criteria. So how does black avoid that? What are the possible replies? Well, clearly, if he plays c6, you take the pawn with check. The king would have to come to d8, and then it would be queen d7 mate. So c6 does nothing. It blocks this, but only temporarily. So what else is there? Well, supposing black plays king d8. Well, again, you take the rook on your 5th. He can only interpose, and you take the bishop, and that's mate. So neither c6 nor king d8 works. What else is there? If he plays bishop b8, It looks a funny move, doesn't it? But you take, and the bishop is pinned. And no matter what black plays there, he is checkmated next move. If he plays king d there, then queen takes b8 is mate. If he moves the rook, it's queen takes b8 mate. He can't move the king anywhere along the 7th. And pushing this pawn, it would still be queen b8 mate. So that works rather nicely as well. What else is there? Just while I put these back. I'm leaving castles, which I realise is playable, it's within the rules, until last. So we've tried c6, we've tried king d8, and we've tried bishop b8. What else is there? What about rook d8? Okay, queen c6. He has to interpose the rook, and then it's mate on d7. So rook d8 doesn't work. Anything else? What about the other rook? To f7. Clearly if you check down, he'll just put it back. So for our 5th move, what do we play? Well, we take down here. Yet again. The king cannot make a legal move, so it has to interpose, and then the next move is checkmate. So all of that is fine. So I think that eliminates everything except for castling. So let's put this back how we had it. Right, so we've played queen a1, rook takes f5, queen h8 check, rook f8, knight f6 to sacrifice, ef, queen h1. And we've tried bishop moves to there as well. We've tried rook to d8, rook to f7, and c6 and king d8. And none of those works. I think that is an absolute fact. So according to the way that I'm looking at this, there's only one move left and it's castles. So how does white finish this game in 2 moves? Queen a1, rook f5, 2, queen h8, rook f8, 3, knight f6 check, ef, 4, queen h1, castles. Can you see the winning move there? And make the following move. Well, it's queen h8. Black only has one reply, which is there. And then we deliver checkmate on a6. And nothing can interpose, and the king can't escape. And unfortunately for black, with having castled the rook here, there's no escape square on d8. So I think that is absolutely foolproof. And I certainly hope so, because I thought I'd solved it, and I woke up in the night and I thought, no, having played 4 queen g7, black can castle and escape it. So I had to start all over again, but I was pretty confident that I had the first 3 moves correct for white and for black, and I think this proves it. You just need to home in on queen h1. This is the final piece of the jigsaw, and everything then falls into place. And castling fails for black here, not on 1 occasion, not on 2, but on 3 occasions. Castling on move 1, castling on move 2 after he's played rook takes h3 and white has played bishop takes h3, and then castling on move 4 after white has played queen h1. None of it works. A fantastic result. I do hope you enjoyed that game, and I look forward to presenting to you problem number 9 in the not too distant future. That is a mate in 10, by the way. I believe I have solved that one. I don't think there's any question of there being any crook in any stage of that solution. I certainly hope not. But before I present it to you, I'll go through it again just to make absolutely sure. Enjoy your chess and good luck in the future, and goodbye for now.